Now, some of the uranium mining sites were being worked until even 1995. I know I said the Maillusu area was ended but way before that, but some of these mining sites were not. Now, in 1991, as I mentioned, the Soviet Union collapsed and any monitoring or even acknowledgement, much less responsibility, went out the window. A 2006 analysis by Pure Earth, that's that environmental non-government organization, they named Maillusu the third most populated place in the world at that time. The town's cancer rate was 50% higher than the national average. The organization reported and local doctors described a large number of birth defects, poor immune systems, and nausea and vomiting among children. Many communities living around other tailing sites that contain pesticides and heavy metals have yet to be studied. So that's a problem too.
Man.
So locals say there has been little monitoring, as I mentioned, or maintenance of these dumps, whether it's the tailings dams or just the uranium dumps themselves. The International Atomic Energy Agency wrote a 2010 report warning that Maillusu, which is currently home to around 25,000 people, was in urgent need of a cleanup.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to the Poisoner's Almanac. I am your co-host, Adam.
Rebecca. I don't know what that was.
How you been, my dear?
I am pretty good. I feel like this episode is cursed because it has taken us forever to get started. Of course, yesterday we didn't have a chance because I had to go to an awards thing. It's like a classroom awards thing. So we're doing it today. And hopefully that's why I've been getting like the episodes out on Sundays instead of Saturdays, because like things keep happening on the days that we're supposed to do the recording. And it's like, oh my God. So, but after this week, I feel like things will hopefully slow down a little bit since she'll be done with school by Wednesday. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to a viewer DM from Sophia. She goes by Supergirl Sway or Supergirl Swee. I'm not sure. I believe she's Swedish. So I don't know if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly or not. Okay. She asks, "Hi, Adam. I have a suggestion for the Patreon. You know, when Becca gets sidetracked in the podcast, when she gives background information to give the listener a basic understanding of the topic at hand, like in the intro to the Chernobyl episode, she always has looked into the references before the episode unless she gets really sidetracked and Googles while recording. My point is that she always gives the audience enough context. You, on the other hand, jokes aside, you have made a lot of references to the game Destiny 2 and left it at saying that it is one of your favorite games, maybe even the favorite game." You grab the next one. It took several screenshots to fit this in. She said, "I just got an email from PlayStation about 2 new expansions for Destiny 2, and I immediately thought of you. I haven't played the game myself, but you've made me curious. Now to my request as a patron and a gamer, what if you made a video for the Patreon about Destiny 2? Not a review, not a gameplay video, but more of an introduction to the game. Think how Becca built up the storyline in the podcast. The background, the scenery, main characters, and the major events that were taking place. I'm thinking a video between 5 and 20 minutes in the Spooky Lake Month format." Becca knows what I mean, and I know exactly what you mean there. Yes, hello.
The amount of dopamine I get
5 out of
hearing
10
that.
spookies. Would you enjoy that? I really would, and I cannot be. Oh shucks, that button's in the way. Hang on, I can't. I cannot be something podcast fan that is a gamer. Oh gosh, I didn't even realize that button was going to be in the way. Hang on a second. Let's get the next screenshot.
I was like, I've got to figure it out, and then you took it away from me.
Here we go. There it is. Okay, I cannot be the only podcast fan that is a gamer and would appreciate some gaming content on the Patreon if you have the time, and if Becca says okay. That second part is the main thing. Best regards, Sophia Supergirl Sway. Sorry. P.S. I'm also very curious about your religious cult experience, maybe you would be comfortable telling the Patreon a bit more behind the paywall.
I could
So I
like
responded,
ask you questions. Could be like your interviewer
that would be
for
very
for
interesting.
the culty one, at
Yes.
least.
Because I think to this day, there would be fresh questions that you would have for me
Oh, yeah.
because I grew up in that world and you didn't.
Well, I had questions when we were both like there. So I was like, why are we doing?
Yes.
Why do they want us to do that?
Yes.
Yeah, and but interesting experience. And honestly, Destiny's I used to love Destiny 1. I
Mm-hmm.
suck at it so much. But like shooter games I'm not good at because like my reaction time is often off.
Yeah.
So I'm just yeah, I don't do well with the shooter games. Puzzles, I like the puzzles though.
Mm-hmm.
But the Destiny lore is pretty cool. You could even have like the little you could have like a whole whiteboard of like I don't know. It looks like a not a family tree, but like this comes to this, and then it's like that guy on that meme that's like, you know,
Yes.
great.
Charlie Day from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
There you go.
Yeah. So, yes, Sophia, I think that's a brilliant idea. I think I'd love to do both. And I'll stick to what you described, like what you want to know more about the game, because, YouTube is covered with, gameplay and all that stuff. But especially for me, I'd love to explain how I got into the game, considering Destiny was the first person shooter I had ever played. I was 30 years old. I never got into first person shooter games. And because I grew up in the cult, I really wasn't allowed to play video games too much.
That's just sad. I brought you into
Very
Zelda.
much.
I got you into Zelda because Zelda's always been one of my
You did.
favorites.
Let's be honest, you got me into everything. All the things that normal people do, my wife got me into. Hello, Toon Link. Good to see you again. So yes, Sophia, that is a brilliant idea. And stay tuned because I'm gonna try to make that happen very soon.
Maybe I can go on vacation one week and you can take the bonus episode.
That's that's a great idea. That's a great idea. And that's spoken like a woman who is stretched like not enough butter over too much bread.
Well, I'm trying to recognize my limits. I'm not good at that.
You're not. You're not actually. Don't lie to the people.
I said I'm not good at that.
And by not good at that, what she means is I tell her we should hire an editor and you say no.
Well, I don't like making people do things.
And here we go. Round the mountain again.
I couldn't be a boss because I'd be like, oh, let me help you with that.
Oh no, you'd be a great boss. Everyone would love you, and you guys, yeah. Anyways, all right, that's going to move us on to a very interesting poison in the news is what we're calling this segment. My goodness, the trial that's been going on with Sean Combs or P. Diddy, as the world knows him currently. The first week of his trial ended with Cassie cross-examination. Wait, let me scroll up. Hang on. That's not the headline. They got multiple headlines. Okay. Diddy's ex-bodyguard claims witness went missing before trial. He says that he was poisoned 3 times, ladies and gentlemen. Poisoned 3 times. So let's explain. Big homie CC, who previously worked as Sean Diddy Combs' bodyguard, believes that a key trial witness allegedly went missing before taking the stand. And he did an interview with Piers Morgan recently. That's what this story is based on. This man says, my gut feeling of what's going to take place is we're going to see a lot of strange things due to the fact that I know how this world works after working in the industry. Whenever these trials come about, the closer you get to the trial date, a lot of things start happening to remove people from the case that are going to strengthen the case. I think he meant strengthen the case for the defense, not the prosecution. Or maybe he's trying to say the prosecution will be emboldened because, anyways. You get the idea. Combs does not want this trial to take place.
Well,
he said, I feel like we're watching this take place now with one of the male blank worker guys who provided the tapes to the feds. He's disappeared. I expect to see a lot of strange things take place. I expect to see the defense team to do a lot of steps to lighten the image of Combs, and we've been watching that take place. And further down, Big Homie, meanwhile, told Piers Morgan he's been poisoned 3 times over the years. The former bodyguard who now speaks out against human trafficking did not clarify whether it was Diddy who attempted to poison him. He says, along this path, I've been poisoned 3 times. My toxicology report showed cyanide. And then he makes this statement, cyanide metabolizes into pneumonia in your body. I don't think that's physiologically correct.
Oh, I mean,
He said he's had pneumonia on.
I think I get what he's trying to say, but
Yeah,
metabolizes is not exactly the word probably to use
right.
for that.
He says, I've had pneumonia on 3 occasions. These problems didn't start for me until I started to speak out about people like this. It's been a hard time to line up this interview because the last time I was scheduled to be in this interview, randomly, our car got hit from the side by a blacked out vehicle with no license plate. That's happened 3 times this month so far. Somebody didn't want me to do this interview.
Wasn't he in the car with Biggie when Biggie got shot or something? Or was that a whole different thing?
Are you serious?
I can't remember. I
I
know
didn't know that part.
Tupac was in a car. I don't know if Biggie was. Let me check.
Wow. Okay. Big homie who stressed that he wants to see the justice system prevail in Diddy's trial, also believes that the disgraced music mogul would want to threaten or intimidate him against speaking up. Probably be in his best interest if I were unalive. But good luck with that, though, Big homie added with a laugh. I've been proven to be hard to unalive, though. So
Probably don't want to jinx
that
himself
is
doing that.
What's that?
Probably doesn't want to jinx himself saying that.
So that is poison in the news, ladies and gentlemen.
Basically, cyanide, if it doesn't kill you straight out, it, typically it prevents your cells from using oxygen, and usually cyanide can kill pretty fast, but when it doesn't, it's inhibiting that cellular respiration. So you get the hypoxia, you get the inflammation and damage to the lung tissue, and then you get what's called chemical pneumonia. So, and there has been some speculation that this is also what Diddy's first wife died from. I think it was his first wife, Kim Porter. Is that her name? And I've been asked about that, I think, in our Instagram DMs by at least one person. And it's honestly,
really,
I kind of had, with him getting arrested, all the stuff that went down with him, I've just been kind of watching and waiting to see just sort of what happens with that and how to, because I don't like doing episodes or even bonus episodes without like too early when something's going on, because it's like there could be more detail added on later. I know you can do updates, but I kind of like to have a full picture so I don't say something erroneous or that's just not proven, that kind of thing. But
true, but also people want to hear your take.
Yeah. But I mean, the whole Kim Porter situation is definitely suspicious. I remember reading about that and being like, and now everything else that's going on with him. And I think a lot of people in that industry knew a lot of things about Diddy or whatever he goes by now that they just didn't speak of, or if they did, it was very subtle because of probably fear.
Oh yeah, because of the power that he has.
Yeah. But he's also, I don't know. And he does have power, he has influence, he has money. I don't think he's all that intelligent. Does that
okay
make sense?
It makes a lot of sense, but here's the thing. I think he has a dark personality type. And by dark personality type, I mean narcissistic, psychopathic, coercive control. Some combination, one of, or some combination of all 3 of those. I think he literally, in the same way that you and I have different neurotypes, he has the dark personality neurotypes. He has a different brain.
Yeah.
I believe that his amygdala does not light up nearly as much as ours does. I believe he does not experience fear. I don't think he experiences emotions or other people's emotions in the same way that we do. Mm-hmm. I think he feeds himself on the pain and the exploitation of other people.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. He's having these massive parties. There's lots of people there. It's not that hard for information to get out when you have more people. We have that high a number of people involved. Okay, but he has created an entire stratified web of people that he controls to different degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Cassie Ventura, they asked her on the witness stand, they said, why did you not leave sooner? If you were being abused in such a way, what kept you there? And she told them the truth. She said, I was deeply in love.
It's either that or it's
And
fear.
he knows that about her.
You know.
Well, it's fear's mixed in.
Yeah,
But they don't want to lose.
You don't want. It's like, why didn't you leave that cult, or why didn't you leave that relationship? It's not always.
Of course,
it's not a simple explanation all the time, because I feel like,
no.
and in a way, when you ask that question, it's almost victim blaming, because it's like,
yeah,
well, why didn't you just leave?
Sure.
It's like, it's not always.
Oh, of course.
It's not easy. They'll just leave.
No. Right. Of course. As soon as Cassie says, yeah. As soon as Cassie says, I was deeply in love, that is not received one way in that courtroom. That is received 73 different ways in that courtroom. And there's some people who have been under the control of a dark personality type who will hear Cassie say that and say, yep, I know exactly what she's talking about. And the people who haven't, or the people who are not really tapping into any kind of empathy, will say, this girl's crazy. No, she's not. She's actually not. These dark personality types, forgive me for getting off on this tangent, but like, how did Diddy do all this? He has a different brain, folks. He is a malignant narcissist. He was literally on tape trying to unalive that same woman in a hotel. He got caught on tape doing it. Then he issues an apology, and then he goes right on doing exactly what he's doing because he does not care. And
his ego also wins out, I guess, over the intelligence.
Oh, sure. Oh, well, the dark personality types have.
I'm immune. I'm bulletproof.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's right.
Which, speaking of which, with the whole Biggie thing I mentioned, he was in a separate car with his own entourage when Biggie was shot.
Okay.
And there has been some speculation that he set that up as well, even though he had like the "I'll Be Missing You" song that he kind of stole from Sting. Not gonna lie, because he didn't pay Sting for that or acknowledge that
he did not.
That sampling.
They did not clear. They did not clear that song before he sampled it, and I still can't believe.
Yeah, like he's been in the music industry long enough to know that that's not. Legal.
And Sting was in an interview with the Breakfast Club, and Charlemagne the God asked him. He said, "Does Diddy have to pay you like $1,000 a day for the rights to sample your song?" He's like, "Yeah, that's true."
I don't know. It feels almost like, if it's true that he did have something to do with Biggie's death, I don't know. That's just speculation. That's theory. I don't know. But if he
also he did that.
Yeah, but if he did, what a great way to be like, he was my best friend. I'm gonna write a tribute song to him. And I don't know. I remember when all that happened. That was what. Was that in the 90s when that happened? Like it was the
90s.
I might be wrong. I think it was around that time, because I was in middle school when Tupac died, and that wasn't that long after Biggie's death. So, anyway, he's in a world of trouble, and I'm glad to see
Tons.
I'm glad to see it.
I love to see it. Love to see it. Because foundationally, he believes he is not capable of being wrong. He doesn't believe that
but he
about
did run.
himself.
He ran for it when they came for him the first time. So I think he knows he's in deep doo-doo. Not going to go well for him.
And just to tie off that point, if you're interested in hearing more about dark personality types, cult dynamics, and how to escape a cult, I'm going to be doing a bonus episode about all that.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
Stay tuned, friends.
That whole thing was basically a cult situation. So here we are.
Exactly. Exactly. Story time. I escaped a religious cult 7 years ago. Without going into too much detail here, let me just say it was an extremely difficult journey. My mental health spiraled downhill, and I thankfully had enough presence of mind to seek out a therapist to work through what was going on with me.
My therapist helped give me context to all the wild things I had walked away from. He was kind, patient, and guided me through what my new normal might look like. I had never had healthy boundaries in my life. Therapy helped show me that as a result of being in a cult or a high control group, I had never fully become my own person. It's a shocking thing to learn at the age of 32. I learned how to communicate to the people around me what I was going to do, and more importantly, not do with my time, energy, and resources. BetterHelp is the sponsor of this episode, and they're on a mission to make starting therapy easier. BetterHelp is a platform where therapists and their clients can communicate effectively and get the most out of therapy. There's a journal inside the platform for personal reflection, and there are group sessions on a number of different topics available every day. Starting therapy is easy with BetterHelp. Fill out a questionnaire, and you will match with a therapist in as little as a couple of days. One of the best features of BetterHelp is that if the first therapist doesn't feel like the right fit, you can easily switch to another one until you find someone you really connect with. They carefully make sure therapists on the platform are well qualified, and their customer support team is there to help you if you have any questions. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. If you're struggling and think you'd benefit from a therapy session, go to betterhelp.com/almanac or choose the Poisoner's Almanac during sign up and get 10% off your first month of therapy.
Okay, that's going to take us to some housekeeping. I suppose I should open the Notes app where I have. Just waiting for it to to update. Okay. Please be sure to follow us on whatever platform you're listening on. Thank you in advance for leaving 5-star reviews. On whatever platform you're listening on, we're going to start reading some of those on the podcast here to shout you guys out. Thank you so much. The reviews function like a tip jar, a digital tip jar that pushes the podcast further into the algorithm and into the ears of listeners like you. Make sure you follow us on socials. We got links in the show notes for all that. We now have a dedicated YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram for the podcast itself. The YouTube has just now started to host the video version of this podcast where you can see our wonderful faces and all of our screen shares and all that fun stuff. So be sure to follow that YouTube channel. It's going to be linked in the show notes. If you're listening on a mobile device, screenshot that and post that to your socials and tag us. We would love to reshare that and interact with you guys online. The Patreon is up and running. The link is in the show notes to join that. Let us know what kind of content you like to see, just like Sophia did, as we pointed out. Perks for patrons include the option to leave us a voicemail that we will listen to and react to right here on the podcast, weekly bonus episodes, and you get shouted out by name on the podcast, and those people are as follows: 87 Pens Girl 71, Mara Santiago, Kate the Fairy, Grace Lahan, Genevieve, Nahev Shatreet, Jay Went, Inken Hafner, Kiri Yorsek, Tay of Sunshine, Monique, Shane R., Sue Steves, James Mills, Megan Geiler, Liz B., Willie Wolf NZ, Mama G., Nicole Rivers, Richard Miyako, Heather Nolan, Kaylee, Sasha Rubel, Maya Shostak, Maggie's Yarm, Ogre the Viking, Lynn Rocket, Brett Moser, Zaid, Neil Houdini, Nicole Crane, Jefferson Vargas, Carmen Q, Sarah G, Knit Ninja, Estar, Olive Octopus, Betsy Rich, Terrorsaurus Hex, T-Bug, Christine Moljadi, Morgan Brittingham, Blau Frosch, a.k.a. Clara Jurisons, Vix, Anne Maria, Carl Ziegler Jr., Clyde, Jennifer Wilson Richter, Macaulay Sterland, Too Fidgety, Wendy G., Elena MK, Vilma Anderson, Caitlin Martin, Pungrammed 101, Minnesota SPT, Tasha, Stuart Slattery, Prim Risen, Simone Valdez, Christian Scradergaard, Maria Anna, Bonnie, Oma D., Rhinel Alara, Kristen Arnold, Aaron Carey, Lynn Simpson, Melissa Emmel, Desiree Davis, Jennifer Ramirez Johnson, Dalek Party, The Warped Witch, Sometimes Jules, Mr. Slave, Dizzy Dancer, Creative Otter, Yadmit, Supergirl Sway, Rachel, Anya Brandt, Ebby, Leah Marie Matson, Lady Digitalis, Jesse, Shay 10, Julia Franzoni, Sparks, Gloria Eichmann, Thomas Huff, From Strings to Things, Soy Kasumi, Jessica Gasparini, Robert Jr., Caitlin, Ron Mack, and last but not least, Donna Lankianese. And please send us a comment or a DM to let me know which of those names I horribly mispronounced. Thank you all for supporting the podcast.
Yes, yes,
Um,
yes.
and always feel free to send us questions or content suggestions with a DM or a comment. And that's going to bring us to today's subject, my dear, which is
Well, I think we need to talk about some more ghost towns, toxic ghost towns. I say that,
let's
but
do it.
there is at least one town on this list that is still inhabited, but we'll go over that because it's still toxic. So now there are a lot of left behind cities, towns, villages, homes, hospitals. I mean, lakes, all kinds of stuff due to toxic contamination and the site's just becoming unlivable or unworkable or whatever. And last time we discussed this, we went over Pitcher, Oklahoma, Centralia, Pennsylvania, Wittenoom in Australia with they had the mines for the why is the word asparagus in my head? No, it's not asparagus mining, is it? No, it's the
Well, I'll tell you what, Dad used to go to work every day in those asparagus mines, and he died of the green lung.
the stuff that gets in your lungs, and it's like fiber. It's like it's included in like insulation at one point, or it was not anymore.
Fiberglass?
No,
Asbestos.
asbestos. I'm telling you, my brain is not working right. Um,
Tonight we're having Tuscany pork chops with balsamic vinaigrette sauce with a side of asbestos. Excuse me,
asbestos.
asparagus.
Yeah, I don't even know why I said the word fiberglass. Anyway, I meant insulation. Is insulation now fiberglass? I don't know about home building,
Oh,
so
yes.
I don't, you know,
Yes.
there you go. There was a connection.
Mm-hmm.
We also talked about Pripyat in Ukraine. I don't know why I said it like that. Ukraine, which was part of the Soviet Union back in the day.
Used to be.
Yeah. Now, we've also gone over the Bhopal gas disaster, the resulting health issues in the nearby cities that they've continued to face from that. So we've been over a few things similar to this.
Which
But
I asked my dad if he'd heard of the Bhopal incident. He 100% has.
it was a
He
big,
answered
it's a big
immediately.
deal.
He's like, oh, yeah.
It was and is still a big deal because there's still cleanup to do there. There's just so many. There's so many more, but I find these fascinating from both a poisons point of view and a sociological one. I mean, humans have a knack for staying in a place long enough to sort of either use up the resources or cause some sort of reason not to want to live there anymore. Then just leave that place behind. And it's not always due to toxic reasons. It could be just because they don't need what's there anymore. I don't know, but even here, and like I said, for no toxic reason, there's been parts of every town that become vacant as other areas kind of grow and flourish. And that cycle just sort of continues. Like the area I grew up in, there's a lot of like shopping centers that are just sort of boarded up. There's a whole mall that has just been sitting there vacant for over 35 years now.
That's right. And
I
it used
remember,
to be the spot.
yeah, they had a theater in there. There was an arcade. But I remember going there as a kid and just and then it closing, and it's just sat there in disrepair ever since. Now by now it probably does have some toxic stuff in there. It's probably pretty
Oh,
toxic in
yeah.
there now. So
Last I heard, there was an explosion that took place during an attempted demolition. Yeah. Also, that entire site is slowly sinking
I
because it's
mean,
on top of swampland.
yeah, it is. That's true. And I remember that there's a main road, a couple of main roads that meet, like going that direction. Those two roads that meet right there where the mall is, like there have been instances of gators just walking across that road and just stopping traffic.
Get out of here.
So that entire area, yeah, will probably just sink into swampland eventually.
I never knew that.
Yeah. But anyway, moving on, the cities and towns, even the mining areas that we're talking about today. Okay. These once boomed with people, but who had to leave because it was either too dangerous or maybe pointless to stay. But let's start someplace local or semi-local. It's a place that you and I travel to, or actually rather traveled through quite often. In fact, many people do on their way to other small towns or popular spots in South Carolina. Care to take a
Mhm.
guess?
Would you be referring to New Ellenton?
We don't go through New Ellington.
Oh, sorry.
I'm gonna try this again. Care to take a guess?
New Ellenton. Sorry.
It's the Savannah River site.
Oh, my fault. Okay, there it is. It's my next guess. My next guess. I was so close.
And it's an interesting place. People once called it the bomb plant because, well, essentially that is what it kind of was.
That's what they built it for.
Now, obviously, it's not so toxic here that people can't be in the vicinity because it is still open, though it's not for the same purposes as they originally were. Come to think of it,
Sure, it isn't.
I'm not really sure what all goes down there. But I have a best friend that I've known since like kindergarten, though, whose dad, hi, Mr. Stancer, used to work there like way back when. And I've heard that they pay their employees very well. I do know that. But yeah,
Yeah, baby.
He used to
It's a
work there a
federal
long time
government
ago.
installation.
Yeah, so but that was pretty cool though. So let's talk about Ellenton, South Carolina, because this is where the site was built after forcing residents off the land. Like America is good at, actually. Sorry, I'm feeling a bit spicy today.
Oh man,
Now,
that's so America.
there's this thing in America called eminent domain, in which the government, whether it's federal, state, or local, by the rule of the Fifth Amendment, can say they need your property, or as in this case, your whole town, and they'll pay you out what they think your property is worth and just make you get out, right?
And who decides what it's worth?
The government.
The federal government.
Yeah. After talking, I'm sure, to like some people, but they're gonna, they decide. So, but that's basically how that goes. Well, they say it's taking private property and then making it for public use, but I dare you to try to go into SRS for no reason, like the facility itself. Yeah. For a while, it was considered an offense to stop or park on the side of the road that you could travel through, like outside of an emergency. Like it would literally, they had have signs that said, do not stop. So, yeah. Now, there is an entrance to the site itself and many side entrances, also connecting to this particular road. They even have their own little police force and all that. Yeah, and they have people stationed. It looks like an army base, honestly. There's people stationed. You have to check your ID, and you can't get in without. It's very Stranger Things, like you're trying to go in and see what they're doing at that place. Yeah, when they try to figure out what happened to Will. But anyway, back to Ellenton and eminent domain. The letter for the day is E. Just kidding. In 1950, the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission decided to take the town, as well as other small communities in the area, not just Ellenton, but there were some other smaller towns, as a part of its plan to build a nuclear plant. Now, it was to be a site for the production of basic materials used in nuclear weapons, like the H-bomb. So mainly tritium and plutonium-239 for the nation's defense throughout the Cold War. Now, DuPont, I'm sure we've heard that name a few times. They aided the construction of the place, and there were like 5 reactors on the site for production of those materials. So, yeah. There were also 2 chemical separations plants, a heavy water extraction plant, a nuclear fuel and target fabrication facility, a tritium extraction facility, and waste management facilities built.
Yeah, I've actually
Was the
pulled it up
sign.
on Google.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've pulled it up on Google Maps here so people can get a feel for
Yeah.
Savannah River. Savannah River operations is right here. This is the former site of Ellenton.
Yeah.
Here in the south is New Ellenton. This is where they moved that entire town.
we're getting to that point in a second, but there's some stuff to talk about with
Mhm.
Ellenton first because there were some things about Ellenton in their history I had no idea about. And I like to I like to dig into accurate history and maybe tell people things that they aren't going to learn elsewhere.
Mhm.
So I like to
Yeah, I
stir up
pulled up
trouble.
the giant blue Savannah Riverside sign.
Yeah.
Was that what you wanted?
They had like a building or two, but I was like, I don't want just a building or two, so I'll just show them like with the entrance sign here. This is what it looks like today,
Mhm.
basically. Now, Ellenton itself was settled in 1870, not long after the construction of Port Royal and the Augusta Railroad, which has long since been renamed. I think it's owned by CSX now. And
Yes.
this place had its own interesting and nasty history, as I've mentioned. For most of its years, it was an agricultural, trading, and like sawmill town. It's one of those towns where, it's got a railroad next to it. So it was big for the time that railroads were necessary. It was a whole thing.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. So a wealthy man by the name of Robert Jefferson Dunbar, he ran a plantation here at the time, and the railroad ran through it or by it, I guess, not, you know, through the property.
Mhm.
And according to oral history, the superintendent of that railroad construction operation, his name was Stephen Caldwell Millet, wanted to name the place Ellentown because he was struck by the beauty of Dunbar's daughter, Mary Ellen Dunbar, who in oral traditions was 9 years old.
The way that you said that.
Well,
Oh.
I say that in that way because the Savannah River Archaeological Research Program has argued that Mary Ellen Dunbar would have actually been between like 22 and 26 at the time this happened. So maybe, I hope, because you otherwise.
Boy, we do hope.
There was also a riot that occurred in and near Ellenton in September of 1876 over a period of 7 days. Um, there was a lot of political and racial tension involved, as you could imagine, in the South at this time. Um, it's just how it was. Honestly, still is in some of these little creepy towns in the South. Um, Now, apparently, this white lady in like this nearby town of Silverton is the same county as in Ellenton, which is Aiken County. Um, she was married to this farmer, and she said that two black men tried to attack her, but she drove them off with a gun. That was her story. Other stories
Mhm.
are that they were running and they accidentally ran into her, and she said it was an attack. So there's different stories. Um,
Sounds just like Emmett Till.
it's a it was a whole thing. Now, it
Mhm.
yeah. So there was a black man named Peter Williams who ended up being hunted down by this gang of white dudes, and they tried to force him to go to the farm for identification. And when he was trying to get away, though, he was shot. The lady who said
Mhm.
she'd been attacked said that he wasn't one of the men, but Peter Williams died later from his wounds, having been shot. So, this came after a lot of fighting between Democrats who had some paramilitary group on their side. So, a bunch of like farmer dudes who found guns and said, "Yeah, we tough" or whatever.
They
Like,
found each other on the dark web.
get a life. um, so, against Black Republican voters. So, for this to make sense, in this current era, you must remember that like the parties were kind of switched in terms of values back then.
Mhm.
So,
Yes.
yeah. Now, these Republican men would have been voting for civil rights and all that, as they should. And the little farmer boys with their little rifles didn't like that. Um, so I hope you like my retelling. Um,
I love this.
a, a warrant
This is my
was
favorite show.
a warrant was issued to arrest a man named Fred Pope, who people said was like Peter Williams' accomplice, even though Peter Williams didn't do anything. Like even the lady was like, "Yeah, that's not one of the men." Okay. So
Not like she cared.
yeah, so a group of about 14 white dudes went out to get this guy who was being protected at Rouse's Bridge. It's called something else now, actually, I think, but it's near Charleston. So a little ways away, really. Um, but he was being guarded by several armed black men. So the white dudes left, right? I'm just telling you like the story in summary fashion here.
Wow.
So tensions only rose between this incident and the political stuff that was going on. As you can imagine, there was an election about to take place. Um, so it was very high tensions. Now, but by September 18th, it was reported that like 500 to 600 white dudes from Augusta and Columbia County, where we live in
Whoop,
Georgia,
whoop.
uh, who were in like rifle clubs or cosplaying military or whatever. Um, I say that because like these men back then, especially, and some now, there's some of these people now that are like, well,
all I can see,
I feel big, I
all I
have
can see
guns,
is,
right?
all I can see is Dwight Schrute's Shadows of the Night group, like doing their monthly meeting at the office, and Jim walks in.
And like,
Anyways,
yeah, and like these men were violent
hmm
mobs, masses of men.
that's right.
They were not trying to defend anything honorable. They were
hmm
just violent, angry men who had no life and just wanted to cause problems.
hmm
Um, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I am making fun of
And
them.
this is, yeah, well, they deserve it. This is the value of civil rights, first of all, and also due process.
It's just, yeah. I was reading this and I was like, not only are these guys violent, they're very foolish. Like they're dumb.
hmm
Anyway, so they were on their way to Ellenton, where all this mess had started, I guess. Um,
Yes, sir.
now, they basically lost their minds, as mobs do, and they tore up parts of the railroad.
Excuse me?
Okay, yeah, they tore up parts of the railroad, and they just started attacking black men in fields and on the streets, just for no, just lost their minds. That's why I'm like, these guys are it's just, I don't know, it's so stupid. So yeah, they were just being violent and ridiculous and horrible. Now, the official record of deputy U.S. Marshals indicated between 25 and 30 black men were killed. A New York Times reporter in an article stated as many as 100 blacks were killed in the conflicts, um, which
Mhm.
extended to September 21st, with several whites wounded.
Yeah.
W. Robert Williams was the one white guy killed, and who knows, maybe he hit himself with a piece of railroad. I don't know. These guys were doing some stupid stuff. Like they were just violent and ridiculous,
Mhm.
and people still get like this. And I don't get it. It's like the primitive brain takes over or something, and it's like all I can imagine is like when the movie Zoolander, when they're in front of the computer and they're they start beating it up, and it's like that's all I can
They
imagine. Like,
suddenly turn into chimpanzees.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like, what is
Mhm.
wrong with you? And honestly, I feel like that's kind of, I mean, and I don't like monkeys, apes in general, but like I feel like that's insulting to chimpanzees because I feel like they're at least, I don't know, they're smart, right?
Well,
Or they're
yeah,
supposed to be. So
sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
And then
whatever.
when disaster happens, they go, "Where'd all the files go?"
Anyway,
Yeah.
so there was a trial, and at this trial there was actually a trial of some black men in May of 1877 because of course they want to put them on trial, but not the. It's infuriating. Okay, I was reading this and I was so
Oh, yeah.
mad most
Oh,
of the
yeah.
time.
Typical, yeah. Typical, what would you call that? Would you call that the Jim Crow South? Because
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
post-emancipation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
numerous witnesses testified that the white dudes had repeatedly said that they intend to carry the election of 1876. This is a quote if they had to wade in blood up to their saddle girths.
Yes, because that will just be the best way to build a life and society that everyone wants to participate in. Is
Mm-hmm.
that how this, like what? I don't know. They don't have a frontal lobe.
So, but a lot of these people weren't even from South Carolina. They had no say in this vote.
Mm-mm.
So,
Exactly. That's New Ellenton. I see, Ellenton at the time, that's a solid 45 miles from Columbia County. Their only interest in this situation is racial. That's it.
it is. So,
That's all they want to do.
yeah, and then the others were basically saying they were rioting for the election of Wade Hampton the third.
Now, y'all know Jesus can hear you when you lie. That ain't true at all.
And so
Ugh.
this guy was running for South Carolina governor, definitely pro-slavery, pro-guns, pro-rifle military cosplay BS.
Pro catching tetanus from tearing up the railroad and dying like an idiot.
Yeah. I mean, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. So he was it's stupid. Now, there had been other such riots for this purpose involving Georgia and South Carolina. But he was supposed to be running for governor for South Carolina. Now, these idiots called themselves the Redeemers. But
Oh my God.
their mission was to restore white supremacy in the South.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm with you now. Gotcha.
And they believed that this dude, Wade Hampton III, would sort of be their savior to do so, right? So there are
Sorry. It's absurd.
it's ridiculous. There are currently some streets named for Hampton, statues of this nut job in a lot of South Carolina cities. Also, Hampton County, Hampton, South Carolina, is named for him. Ew.
Amen. Sounds like a great guy.
And we've driven through Hampton County.
Oh, many times.
I feel like if they
Also,
knew
Hampton.
if they knew this, they might change the name of that city. I'm just saying.
But probably not.
It's pretty awful.
Uh-huh.
Now,
also, Hampton County is the kind of the home base for the Murdoch family. That was in the news a lot the last several years for what happened with Alex Murdoch. If you haven't seen the Netflix special about that, check it out. So good.
We could totally go over that case, like in a
baby,
sort of
I'd love it.
Thing. It wasn't. I don't think poison was involved, but it was a whole lot of other
yeah, but
stuff.
it's like
It was a mess.
Oh man. Oh.
And it didn't start with the murder of his wife and kid either.
No.
It started way before that.
No, sir. Mm-hmm.
You'll still see like Murdoch's towing, like I think that's his brother or some sort of relation, but they basically owned that town.
So. That's right, baby.
But yeah, the city of Ellenton basically declined as cotton prices fell after World War I. Then they had the Depression of the 1930s. So by the early 1950s, I just kind of skipped over World War II. So I'm sure there was some stuff that happened, economy-wise there too. But Ellenton had a population of about 760 in the 1950s, about 190 residences, about 30 commercial buildings, 5 churches, 2 schools, including Ellenton High School. There was 1 cotton gin, a city hall and jail, and then the railroad station. So it was a smaller town. So with the building of SRS, the people of Ellenton and other communities I mentioned were given 18 months to get out. So, and I think I have a picture of one guy next to a sign. Yeah.
Yeah, I just pulled it up.
Yeah.
And for those of you who can't see on the screen, I can read the words that they've added to the town sign. It is hard to understand why our town must be destroyed to make a bomb that will destroy someone else's town that they love as much as we love ours. But we feel that they picked not just the best spot in the U.S., but in the world. We love these dear hearts and gentle people who live in our hometown, which includes people who, tried to exterminate Black people. But I digress.
Yeah, historically, I don't even know if these people even knew of their own history at this point, because here it feels like people like to stifle history. So,
wow. Oh, fun fact. This is a super fun fact. I just remembered this. when I used to play, this is before Becca and I met. I was still in college. I would go play what is locally known as sandlot baseball.
You're
It's
killing me, Smalls.
yeah,
Sorry.
exactly. Oh man. Um, Sandlot baseball. There are kind of makeshift ballparks all around this area that used to be part of the Negro Leagues, is what I'm told. And these communities still play baseball. And all these teams that play against one another, they'll play in tournaments for money. There'll be a buy-in and then a cash prize at the end if you happen to win. Um, the teams are made up of college age, even just barely out of high school, all the way up into grown men in their 40s and 50s. Some guys played in college. Every now and then an ex-pro will filter through. We played in a tournament in New Ellenton, and a riot broke out.
Wow.
And to this day, the riot stopped the game, and 90% of our team jumped in their cars and got the heck out of there because they
What
didn't
was it
feel
about?
safe. It looked as if, this is only hearsay, it looked as if people were ganging up on one person in particular. It
Well,
was
I guess
quite,
things don't change.
yes,
So,
but I do not believe this was not racially motivated.
mhm.
This was actually within the black community in New Ellenton.
Yeah,
And
some
I don't know
violence.
what I don't know what their grievance was, but a very motivated crowd of people were surrounding. There was at least two people who had started to physically fight, and then a mob of a crowd surrounded them. And at one point, I saw a folding metal chair go up in the air in the middle of the crowd and come down, and I heard a whack. Somebody got popped by a folding chair. And I, with my my blank Word document Caucasian self, I had never seen anything like it. It was so funny. I'm still in the church cult at this point. I don't have any life experience to speak of. And I'm looking around and I see these older guys on my team. Their like wives had showed up to watch them play. They got in their cars so fast and got out of there.
Did anybody call
And
the cops?
I don't believe anybody, they may have. I honestly can't say. But listen, at one point, there was a tractor trailer that did not have a trailer that was parked near the ballpark because of, we're in the middle of a neighborhood, and the mob got around that tractor trailer and was rocking that thing back and forth, side to side.
There's some sort of psychosis that happens when that
There
whole
is.
mob
There's some
mentality
group dynamics that
happens.
happen. Yes, you're right.
And I
There's
don't
group dynamics
understand
that
it.
happen with mobs. Yeah. So, anyways,
But
just wanted to throw that story out there. I completely forgot about that, but that stopped the game and we got out of there as
because
quick as we could.
I know that sports things have caused mobs like that too. And I'm just
Mm.
like, it's a game. Like,
And it was
game.
unrelated to the game we were playing at the time.
Right. Oh yeah,
It
I figured.
was.
But and honestly,
Mhm.
these small towns, everybody knows everybody. So I mean, there may have been some cops involved too. Who knows? You
It's
never know.
possible.
You never know. Now,
Hmm.
but those who didn't own property were expected to just leave because they're not going to pay you for anything if you don't have anything, I guess. But the government did pay the property owners for their land. About 6,000 people had to be relocated, and about 6,000 graves were as well. Um, so they
Oh
dug
my
up.
God.
Yeah,
6,000.
I think though that they left some behind. So not only is
Well, yeah.
SRS toxic, it might be haunted. I'm just kidding. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just speculating. I don't even believe in ghosts.
That's
I don't
why.
think I believe in. Do I believe in ghosts? I've never seen one, so I don't. Whatever.
Let's check in. Rebecca, do you believe in ghosts?
I do not know. I think there are
Okay.
things we don't understand. But I don't believe in the whole like uh woo, like in that format, I guess. I think there's things
I
that can
I just
be.
love how you had to check in real time. You're like, wait a minute, do I believe in that
But
thing that I'm talking about?
I tend to what is it? Overanalyze though. I tend to try to like scientifically figure out like what could that be? What could that, you know what I
Oh,
mean?
okay.
So, and
Yeah.
we don't know everything scientifically either. I mean, we find out stuff all the time. So
It's true.
anyway, but I'm the same way with aliens, though. People are like, I can't make fun of people who believe in aliens because I was like, I don't know. I mean, I think there could be bacteria living on another planet. I can't discount that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know about like aliens, like little green men. Like, I'm like, I've never seen a UFO, but at the same time, if I did see one, I probably wouldn't be shocked. I'd be like, okay, whatever. It's 2025. Here we are. Like it really wouldn't shock me anymore.
Yeah.
There's not much that would.
Millennials. Yeah. I think that would be every millennial's reaction to a UFO. They'd be like, oh, that's wild. Anyways,
Yeah.
I don't have any money.
I just don't care, I guess, about them enough to really have that big of an opinion on it
Well,
when it
yeah,
comes to aliens.
we have never lived in precedented times.
I don't really,
It's always every 3 years, something that has literally never happened before is happening.
like I don't go
And we're
looking
like,
for
we're
it.
tired.
So
We don't. We
you
just
know,
want 5 precedented years. If we could just have, 5 years where nothing happens. Nobody's, threatening to ruin everything. It'd be great.
like that's ever going to happen. I think I'd believe in aliens before I believed in that. So yeah,
I can't disagree. Wow.
I'm in the I don't know, but I kind of don't care either right now. So like if it happened, if the UFOs landed, they were like, take me to your leader, I'd be like, it ain't me. So I got things to do, like I just wouldn't.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know.
I got it.
Can't be
I
bothered.
don't mean to cut this short. I don't mean to cut this short, but I got to get this podcast out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can't be bothered. So also listen to our podcast on your alien podcast
Sure.
channel.
If you guys have Spotify, check it out.
What if they're listening right now? Gathering data on all of our poisonous stuff. If you are, please come rescue me from this planet. Okay. So these people weren't just from Ellenton. This also included the communities of Dunbarton, Hawthorne, Myers, Mill, Robbins, and Lay. This was and is a relatively poor rural area. We've been through a lot of these old railroad towns that have just become just poor rural areas these days. Like they might have been super big back in the day and rich and all that, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of poverty in these places now. A lot of places are boarded up and such.
Yeah.
So there was a significant fraction of those relocated were African American farmers and sharecroppers. And it just feels like another blow because it's like you got to pick up everything you've known now and move. So and we don't care.
It's like a diet version of burning Tulsa to the ground.
Mm.
Like, oh, if minorities lose wealth, that's cool too. We don't care.
Yeah, they don't. And they picked this area, from my understanding, because of the Savannah River and its convenient cooler water, like their ability to collect that cooler water. So, and the Savannah River is quite polluted itself. So,
Yes.
don't go swimming in that. So now there's New Ellenton and Jackson, South Carolina. Jackson's more of a speed trap town.
There is no outside of SRS, Savannah Riverside. There is no industry in Jackson. So the only way they can raise revenue is to give people speeding tickets.
It's an interesting little place. So the old residents and their descendants basically went there. Some did move out of state completely. Just most of them moved to New Ellenton and Jackson. At least those, like who I said, decided to stay. But yeah, these little railroad towns, like I said, they're pretty isolated. They're pretty depressing, I hate to say. The residents apparently have reunions, though, for Ellenton, like to kind of reminisce about the past, at least.
Remember that time we tore the railroad up?
Well, these would be like
later
man. People. I think primarily, like I said, they were African American. So it'd be like, remember when those white boys pulled their own railroad up?
Oh, okay.
Idiot.
That's a different situation. All right.
Yeah. But they do have reunions to talk about Ellenton. Anyway, but the Savannah River site is still there, but they're more involved, they say, with ecological and environmental cleanup type stuff. They're also
Sure you are.
They're also involved with various types of research and the storage of nuclear materials, whether it's from the site itself or other places. So it's a super fun site. The groundwater are still contaminated with trichloroethylene, tetrachloroethylene, tritium, beryllium, and other metals. There's also been radioactive isotopes found in the water and soil in the area. It's got strontium 90, cesium 137, uranium isotopes,
Wait a minute.
iodine 129, and technetium.
Did you say beryllium?
Not like a beryllium sphere.
Oh my God, they're building the omega-13 at Savannah River site. You heard it here first, folks. But what does the omega-13 do?
No, the beryllium sphere was to help their engine systems, right?
Don't ruin this for me. This is an amazing joke.
You broke the ship. You broke the bloody ship. Where are you going? To see if there's a pub. I miss Alan Rickman.
Oh my God.
What a
If you guys
wonderful
haven't
man.
seen Galaxy Quest, it's one of the best movies ever made.
Yeah. So,
I played Richard III.
yeah. So there's a little history there for you behind SRS, the destroyed town of Ellenton, and how racism influenced politics, which it's done
Yay.
quite a bit. Now, the Hampton dude, by the way, did win that 1878 election. So
Great. I'm sure everything got better.
not with him. So we're going to travel to another town in the U.S., this time in Missouri. There is a ghost town in the St. Louis County of Missouri. We say St. Louis, right? Here.
Yeah.
Yeah, St. Louis. Well, I know like in some places they say Louis, right? So
No.
I'm just, I've never been to St. Louis. So are they the ones
Yeah.
with that arch thing?
Yeah, the St. Louis Arch. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Y'all, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of this city and visit some places, right?
Yeah.
So there's a ghost town in St. Louis County of Missouri. Used to be Times Beach, Missouri. Times Beach was founded in 1925 by the St. Louis Star-Times, which was a newspaper that just happened to own a large bit of land along the Merrimack River. And it's kind of weird to see that a newspaper started a town, but they had this idea to turn the area into a small vacation town for like the wealthy. They were going to sell lots that would also include a 6-month subscription of their paper for like $67.50, right? So,
Yeah.
That's their way of furthering their paper business and also getting more money by selling these lots. So, but there were a few problems. You'll notice I said 1925. The Great Depression came in around 1929, 1930, right? Also, this area was a floodplain.
What?
The venture ultimately failed. No one could really afford a summer home at the time, as you could understand. And the newspaper went under by like 1951. Now, by the 1970s, the town was made up of basically low-income housing, and only about 1,200 people lived there. It was located along the famed Route 66, however, so there's that. Now, the roads were never paved because they just ran out of funds to do that sort of thing while they were trying to build this town. And the dust from the makeshift streets was a problem because it just blew everywhere, right? Especially in the summer. So keep this in mind for a moment because we need to set some other events up here to include how it became toxic. Now, around the 1960s in Verona, Missouri, the Northeastern Pharmaceutical and Chemical Company, if you want to just use the acronym NEPACO, sounds like a toxic Pokemon, NEPACO. But they began operations around this time. This company was owned by the makers of Agent Orange, by the way. So,
Okay.
red flag. I need some like flags. I need like red flags in here just to wave at certain things. But yeah, before being bought out later in the 70s, that's who owned it. The main product of this operation was hexachlorophene, which is an antibacterial agent that was used in soaps, toothpastes, and household disinfectants. It just sounds kind of wrong to include toothpastes in there because you're like brushing your teeth with the same chemical that they use in household disinfectants. That's fun.
Oh
Um,
dear.
so there is some chemistry that takes place, obviously. But the important thing to know here is that a resulting byproduct was tetrachlorodibenzo P dioxin.
Got it.
Dioxin should be familiar to our consistent listeners, as it is a poison that we have covered. It's the weapon that was used against former Ukrainian President Viktor Yushchenko. I believe is how you say his name. It was an attempt to keep him from becoming president. He survived, but had some lasting effects, such as the chloracne that marred his face for a while. Now, if anyone needs a reminder, this is a persistent organic pollutant, and exposure to enough of this substance can lead to reproductive and developmental problems, skin issues, mainly the chloracne, and it's like usually acute, but it can last a while, like in that former Ukrainian president's case. Hormonal disruption, immune system damage, liver damage, and various forms of cancer with long-term exposure, especially. Now, it's also been linked to diabetes, ischemic heart disease, and other health issues because it's messing with other different parts of your body, like your immunity and hormones and such. Now, as their description implies, they are persistent both in the environment and in the body. Dioxins can be stored in fat tissues when you're exposed, and it can bioaccumulate. So it doesn't just, you can't do a liver detox or whatever, which
A juice cleanse.
those are just scams anyway. So I'm just letting you know now. I mean, if you like it, if it feels good to you to do it, then sure, but it's not going to actually be great for your health like they say they are. You can also be exposed through what you eat as it bioaccumulates along the food chain as well. Now, this company attempted to purify the product, the hexachlorophene, so that it would contain less dioxin as an ingredient, like the product itself. So it was at like 3 to 5 parts per million, and they were able to get it down to 0.1 parts per million in their product. However, this led to them having to store the extra dioxin residues as this sort of oily substance in a storage tank near the facility, because just because it's not in the product doesn't mean it just disappears, right? It's got to go somewhere. So they were basically sending the accumulated waste to Louisiana at one point to be incinerated because the burning the substance was the best way to get rid of it safely at the time. This is expensive, though. I mean, they're sending it from Missouri to Louisiana and also having it incinerated. So they went looking for cheaper alternatives, which is usually what gets a lot of these companies into trouble, right? Cutting costs. The Independent Petrochemicals Corporation directed them to this man who owned a local oil waste management business. His name was Russell Martin Bliss. Now, Bliss agreed to do the job, of collecting this waste and just getting it off their hands, I guess, for which he would be paid $125 per load. Just for transparency, the IPC, the Independent Petrochemicals Corporation, they were actually charging NEPACO like $3,000 per load as like the middleman, and then paying this dude only like $125.
Okay.
So okay then. So for several months in 1971, Bliss, as I'm going to call him because it's easier, went out and collected this waste that was heavily contaminated with dioxin, and he brought it to his own storage facilities and basically mixed it with used motor oils, which is something he normally collected as well. Now, Bliss also owned a farm with a horse arena, and he was spraying this combination of dioxin oil on his property where the dust would normally be picked up and blown about. And this seemed to keep the dust from moving around for a solid 6 months. So when others noticed this, I know. Just wait.
What year is this? Did you mention that?
1971.
Okay.
So when others noticed this, they started hiring him to do the same for their own properties. Okay. Now, on May 26th, 1971, the owners of Shenandoah Stables near Moscow Mills, Missouri, hired him to spray their riding arena, and they paid him like $150. Okay. Now, he sprayed about 2,000 gallons of this tainted used motor oil on the site, and it was described as being thick and smelling awful. I mean, duh. Now, not long after, just about a few days, horses that were exposed to the area started developing sores, started losing hair. Birds and other critters that would get in the rafters just dropped dead. Um, but when accused of poisoning the area, Bliss denied it and said he had only used motor oil, which I'm like, still ew, but that's not being
Why
honest.
do the worst people that America has to offer become the richest among us? Like like why?
Now,
What I just I hate it so much.
this is before regulations were put on this particular
Yes.
as
Well,
well.
when
So
did Nixon create the EPA? When did that happen?
it would have been in the 70s, but you would still have to
Was it the
have,
70s? Okay.
well, yeah, but there still needed to be specifics added to
Whoop.
EPA rules and stuff because, if it wasn't listed specifically, you couldn't sue them for it, right? You couldn't take them to court over it.
Of course.
Also,
Of
like,
course.
even today, the EPA can mention, like, this is the safe level it should be kept at. It's up to the state to actually, like, concur and, like, yeah, we'll make that a law. So it's kind of up to the state to do that. And if you listen to our bonus episodes, like I talked about a place in Louisiana known as Cancer Alley not too long ago,
Mhm.
and how Louisiana is a bit slow when it comes to regulation and stuff. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, Bliss, like I said, he denied it. The couple decided to remove the top 6 layers of soil from the whole area just in
Well,
case.
for $125 extra, they can remove your soul too. I mean, this guy's he's ready to work.
um, yeah.
I've just
So
sucked 1 year of your life away.
what gets me is the
How do
people
you feel?
a lot of the people who say there's too much regulation, they're the ones that are usually trying to sell some product that's going to kill you,
Brother,
right? Or they have a friend that wants to
it's
sell this
just
product and it's like, "Oh, this poor man can't make money off this product." And it's like, maybe there's a reason he shouldn't.
oh my god.
Oh my god. Like I just don't
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
and I get it, like maybe you don't want the government messing with your business or this or that or the other. And I could see that up to a point, but when it comes to regulating medications and chemicals, like there needs to be a number.
Yes.
There needs to
Yes.
be
Let's
something.
I want to anytime someone is allowed to go on a national news outlet and talk about government regulation, I think it should be a legal requirement that they put your company's profit margin on the screen next to your face. Because if you have an 80% profit margin, I don't care what you think about regulation. It doesn't matter.
People,
They talk about it like it's the overreach of big government. I'm like, brother, are you familiar with radium? Do you know there's still an EPA Superfund site in Orange, New Jersey, where they used to make watches?
yeah,
Anyways,
and like I don't think they realize that there are companies that are happy to put poisonous substances in if it's cheaper
they don't care.
because they've done it
They don't
before.
care.
They've done it
And they
before.
know they've got enough money in their legal war chest to stop the full extent of consequences from ever happening.
Well, if it's
And
not
they will
regulated,
play the legal war of attrition against regular people that they damage.
but if it's not regulated
That's the bottom
anyway,
line.
if there's no number put
Yeah.
on it, then they're not going to they don't have something they have to go by. Therefore, it's not going to hold up in court anyway if you try to sue them. You may get like a
Mhm.
civil sort of thing, but like anyway,
That's right.
that's a whole
Unless
situation.
yeah. That's right. Sorry. I'm going to restrain myself. Please continue.
It's a lot. Or like the price of pharmaceuticals too. That's a whole thing. Like there needs to be a number that things are capped at, in my opinion, because they're just trying to
I
make
yield the balance of my time to the gentle lady from Georgia.
the gentle one, not the crazy one. We know who that is.
I was referring to you.
Okay, good. She's blonde too. I'm just saying we need to make it.
Okay.
Please don't. I'm moving on before I get in trouble. Now,
I'm moving to Denmark.
aliens, where are you? Take me.
Okay.
Okay, so
Oh man.
yeah, okay, so they removed the top 6 layers of soil from that whole area just in case, and they dumped it at a landfill. Another 12 inches, then another 12 inches removed later. They were trying to get rid of it so it wouldn't hurt their animals. But this didn't really fix much because horses who came there still got sick. Over the next several months, about 62 horses either died or had to be euthanized due to the exposure. Like they were just emaciated. They were wasting away. Now, even the couple's children developed headaches and nosebleeds, as well as various gastrointestinal issues. Now, only a month after spraying this farm, Bliss was hired to spray the horserita at Timberline, not Timberlake, stables.
What?
It's called Timberline, and the first thing that pops in my head is, it's gotta be May. And I'm like, it's not you. Please, no. Get away from my brain. But yeah, this is near Jefferson, Missouri. And also at another place at Bubbling Springs Ranch near St. Louis. So these other 2 places had hired him as well. Now at Timberline, 12 horses died after exposure, and children that were exposed were diagnosed with chloracne, which is the skin condition we commonly see with dioxin poisoning. The owners of this farm also decided to remove top layers of soil, suspecting the spray had been the cause. Similar issues were had at Bubbling Springs, and they too removed the top layer of soil to try to solve the problem. It was actually just taken to 2 different yards, one of which belonged to the guy removing it, apparently. So they're just, they're removing it from their farms, but it's still contaminating the soil that's going to landfills and people's yards and such. So the CDC became involved after hearing about what had been going on at Shenandoah Farm and decided to investigate these animal deaths and the sickness in the children, of course, right? Like what the heck is this? Do we need to, is this going to spread? What is going on? So they retrieved samples of the soil and of human and animal blood to test. They were trying to see what this was. And they found PCBs at about 1,590 parts per million and organochlorine insecticides in the soil. Okay. They didn't have the necessary testing, or at least they weren't able to find the dioxin right away. Now, a few years later, in 1973, they discovered the substance trichlorophenol, about 5,000 parts per million in samples, which is simply an organochlorine of phenol with like 3 chlorine atoms bonded to it covalently. Okay.
Oh man, I've got to Google that. What was the name of the chemical again?
It's trichlorophenol, phenol being a major piece of this chemical.
Oh, they have images of the molecule here. Okay, say what you said again about the 3 chlorine atoms.
They are covalently bonded to this organochlorine of phenol. So it's a phenol that is an organochlorine. My brain is trying to go too quick for my mouth. And so
okay. Let me put this on the screen. I'm an organic and I'm a chemistry nerd. So let me just show you guys this. This is so pretty
and deadly.
Let me show you. Oh, look at that.
How can the prettiest things be so deadly?
Hang on. Okay.
You're like, look at it.
So notice Becca said, so I believe, and I can't remember clearly from when I was in class in college, this hydroxyl group or hydroxide group makes it a phenol.
Yes.
And then these 3 chlorine atoms, they're okay, you see the double bond here? Mm-hmm. If it was a benzene ring that did not have the chlorines or the OH group, every single bond here in the carbon ring would be double bonded, like these 3 are. So this indicates that this chlorine ion gets attracted to the benzene ring, and that missing double bond is because this chlorine is sucking up that electron and creating a bond there. That's how it can bond 3 chlorine atoms in addition to the hydroxyl or the is it hydroxyl group? I may have my terminology wrong. That's basically how that works.
Yeah. So
For anyone who wanted to know, which is no one.
So we have people that like paint. I've noticed that paint like nervous system stuff. So who knows? Maybe they'll get into
Ooh,
some
okay,
organochlorine chemical stuff. Deadly.
okay,
Anyway,
all right,
um,
all right.
anyway, but yeah, that's what that is. Now, so they tested the substance itself on the inside of rabbits' ears. I know, poor bunnies. This was also a time when, anyway, and the ears blistered. The skin on the ears blistered as it was as expected that they expected it to, but some of the rabbits also died, which was not actually expected. So by 1974, they finally discovered the soil's samples contained about 30 parts per million of dioxin. So little was known about dioxin at this time and before this, obviously, but scientists did know that it was deadly to animals, at least. So the CDC pulled up on Bliss to ask him about the presence of the substance in this oil, you know, that he had been spraying.
I'm sorry.
What?
CDC pulled up on me, bro.
Well, I mean, yeah, they had to ask him some
I just
questions.
enjoy how you said that.
And he was like, "No, I don't have any idea about this." So, but
And then a horse drops dead right behind him.
putting all this together, though, they traced the substance back to Northeastern Pharmaceutical and Chemical Company, NEPACO. I choose you. Um, but what the company was producing, hexachlorophene, ended up actually being dangerous itself. The FDA had become involved by this point with getting the substance banned, except for like limited use. After the chemical had been linked to the deaths of 32 infants in France after they were exposed to it in baby powder. Um, which, I mean,
Ugh.
baby powder, I think, is still like, even like the recent baby powder has been linked to cancer when inhaled, that kind of
Oh,
thing.
is it talcum powder?
Yeah, I don't know. This is something else, but I know talcum, like that stuff has been linked to other things too now. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so they were trying to get this banned in general. Now, once the CDC visited the site, which was now owned by a different company, I think it was Syntax Agribusiness, uh, they were looking for the source of the dioxin, and they found the storage container that was holding like 4,300 gallons of waste containing dioxin at like 340 parts per million. Now, proper disposal of this waste took some years to complete as there were no incinerators nearby, but it was finished by like 1979 at this site. Not all of the contaminated soil from farms and yards were cleaned up at first, though, because at this time it was believed that the half life for dioxin was like a year. As we know now, though, it's actually more like 11 years. And the half life is like half the time it takes for the substance to degrade. Now, the EPA
Wow.
got involved around 1979 as well, when it was learned that NEPACO had paid some farmer $150 to bury some oil/sludge waste contaminated with dioxin on his farm. So they paid this man $150 to dig a hole on his farm and stick these barrels of waste in there. So after digging, about 90 rusty and leaky barrels of waste, with 11 still containing dioxin and the amounts of 2,000 parts per million. I'm guessing the other ones leaked into the soil. Don't want to eat anything off
Yeah.
that farm.
Yep.
um,
Yeah, because you're gonna see decay of the if it
it
uses
was
like well, I'm
leaking.
guessing like 50-gallon drums, 55-gallon drums, and they just degrade and underground.
So samples were taken at the 3 farms that Bliss had sprayed, earlier on, and it was discovered that the amount of dioxin really had not degraded after 11 years and was still sitting at like 1.8 parts per million in the soil at Shenandoah. And this was the farm they had removed several layers of topsoil from. But yeah, these farms, as well as the properties that soil from the one farm were taken to, and probably the landfills were temporarily shut down so that cleanup could commence, because at this point, like, it's bad. So why does this concern Times Beach? Because Bliss also was hired to spray there as well. I mentioned I mentioned that the dust
I mean, talk
from
about making a career for yourself.
the dust from the roads that had never been paved. I mentioned at Times Beach, it was like a problem, right? Well, in 1972, the St. Louis Star-Times paid Bliss $2,400 to spray this oil across 23 miles of dirt road in Times Beach to kind of settle that pesky sand problem. So he did.
Or or you could just put gravel out there. I have no words.
So he did this, and he used about 160,000 gallons of this stuff that was tainted with dioxin over like a 4-year period. Okay. Now, the EPA knew this before any of the people living in Times Beach did. Like, they discovered this before and didn't tell them. I'm not sure why the people living there were not informed earlier. Honestly, they only became aware because of a leaked report that had been confidential beforehand. The Environmental Defense Fund, which is a nonprofit environmental group, basically leaked a secret document from the EPA that detailed 14 confirmed contaminated sites as well as 41 possibly contaminated sites in Missouri.
Oh my God.
The Environmental Defense
Wait,
Fund.
how did that nonprofit group have access to that document? Somebody must have leaked it to them first.
Yeah, it was leaked, and they, you know, delivered it out
Yeah.
to the public. So,
Okay.
but the Environmental Defense Fund accused the EPA of lowering cleanup standards as well as hiding this. So, um, they were just going to not clean it up and not say anything, I guess. I don't know if that was a funding issue, but still, like, you're not going to tell these people anything. But anyway, the residents living in and around Times Beach pressured the EPA at this point into testing the soil, and they did. The day after they collected samples, however, the worst flood of the town's history washed through. Um, and
Mm.
I told you this was a floodplain with, like, by the Merrimack River.
Yeah.
Now, this river floods pretty often. There were no flood control systems in place, so the river at this point rose to like 14 feet higher than its usual situation. And
Yeah. I've got that photo on the screen right now.
yeah, so people had to
Mhm.
evacuate just from that. The EPA's test did come back positive for dioxin later at like zero point 0.3 parts per million. I mean, this is still higher than the advisable safe levels in soil and water, etc. Like, it probably wouldn't cause there were no cases of like chloracne from it or anything like that. Also, this was some years after it had been sprayed. But um, yeah, so the people of Times Beach were advised to not come back because not only was the soil contaminated, but with the flooding, the water was now as well. According to like one
Mhm.
state EPA site, I think the advisable safe level was 0.0000003 in water. So
So none.
yeah. Anyway,
Let's round down.
this was just according to like one state site. So
Uh-huh.
now,
Mercy.
yeah, this level of contamination would basically be unpredictable at this point with the flooding. So and so would planning for cleanup once the waters receded. So the EPA announced on February 22nd, 1983, that the federal government would pay $33 million and the state $3.7 million to buy out the 800 residential homes and 30 businesses there so that the residents could be permanently relocated.
Wow.
Now, the relocation was done by 1985, and the town was disincorporated. There was extensive cleanup because it just made sense to build an incinerator like at the site at this point and burn every bit of dioxin contaminated materials.
Mhm.
There were about like 265,000 tons of dioxin contaminated materials just from across the state, really, not just from
Mhm.
this one incident. But yeah, but these cleanup efforts were complete by 1997 with a price tag of nearly $200 million. And
Wow.
this area is now the Route 66 State Park. and the soil levels have been testing as safe since, at least. So, yeah.
Oh,
Uh,
wow. Okay, so it was effective.
yeah, but if you want to know what happened to our star players in this story, I can tell you.
Oh.
Um,
Oh, please.
Several bits of legislation were passed, including the Toxic Substances Control Act, to require the testing of chemicals that might be dangerous to the environment. So these are like things that are new now at this point after this situation. The response,
Forgive me for interrupting. How many people did they pay to relocate there? How many was that?
it was 800 residential homes
Okay.
and then 30
And
businesses.
about $33 million.
They were $33 million plus 3.7 million, depending on like the,
Gotcha. So
yep.
37 million. Okay.
So,
I'm just trying to do the math.
and I'm
Oh,
not saying
I did that
everybody
wrong.
got, I don't, I'm sure everybody didn't get an equal amount too, because you're talking about 30 businesses too. And I'm not sure if the businesses are probably going to be more expensive because this was like a poorer
Well,
area.
yeah, sure. So that's about 46 grand per person on average, which, I can't imagine that is enough to replace what you lost. So,
Yeah. So there was also the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act to regulate the transportation and disposal of hazardous waste, which makes sense because in the story we got this guy that's just like, I'll take it off your hands. Or the farmer that's like, yeah, you could bury it in my yard, right? Yeah. So there was also later the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act to create a fund for cleaning up old and abandoned sites where with hazardous waste, uh, and to also hold companies accountable for such pollution. So, like, none of this was a thing yet. Um, yeah, so this was kind of set up after they were evacuated.
mhm.
Yeah, and because these were finally set up, NEPACO was sued by the federal government and made to repay the government for the cleanup of that one dude's farm, like property where they found the 90 barrels of waste underground. They were held accountable for
Mhm.
that. Bliss continued to say he had no idea that the oil contained dioxin, and since there were no requirements at the time that he collected it to have its contents like on paper, like he was not charged federally at least. But
He's absolutely lying.
he was taken to court alongside that company in around 14,000 citizen lawsuits, though. Um, but yeah. Now, these days, there's been some debate as to whether or not the full on evacuation of the town was necessary and if the levels were high enough to warrant such. No one was having acute issues apart from the families from those farms, but there, could have been, or maybe some even now, long term complications from those exposures back in the day. Also, like, the entire town
Mhm.
had been flooded anyway. I mean, those homes were pretty
I
destroyed.
I don't want I don't want anything happening in the neighborhood that I live in that would make a chemical engineer nervous. I'm not a fan.
Yeah. So, one more place I want to travel to. It's in Kyrgyzstan. Uh, yeah, Maillusu. This was a mining town once used for extracting uranium for the Soviet Union, who like owned it at this time. Now, between
Mhm.
1946 and 1968, more than 9,100 tons of uranium ore was mined and processed here by the Zapadny, Zapadnia Mining and Chemical Combine for the Soviets' nuclear and atomic bomb programs. Uh, yeah, it was a secret site basically for the Soviets. They called it Mailbox 200, so that if anybody was listening, it wouldn't give away
Mhm.
where this place was. So Crimean, is it Crimean? The Crimeans?
Crimean.
Crimean Tatars. That's literally how it's said. German prisoners of war and Russian soldiers who were basically left in Germany at the end of World War II, just kind of like got stranded there, were all forced to work in these mines. So like they just sort of became slaves for these people. And the Russian
Mhm.
soldiers as well. So they dug uranium ore out of surrounding rock and brought it to the surface, where it was crushed into this fine sand, treated with chemicals at a nearby processing plant so that it could be refined enough to use for nuclear energy as well as in weapons. Now, the mining operation did shut down in 1968, at least this specific one did. Just because it became less economical. The operators basically left behind about 23 separate uranium tailings dams and 13 uranium waste rock dumps, like just left it there. These
You
were,
said 13 tailings dams?
it was 23 separate uranium tailings dams.
Wow.
And
And it was a
13,
tailings. Yeah. It was a tailings dam that killed that river, the
yeah.
river in Zambia
Mhm.
that we covered last episode.
Yeah. There are also 13 uranium waste rock dumps. So just like 13 sites where they just left some uranium, I guess. Now these dams too, and the dumps were poorly designed and built on the hillside above a town of about 20,000 people. I mean, you're just asking
Okay.
for something to happen. They weren't thinking about safety or anything like that at this time. And it's not these people from this town either. It's these people who are coming to take the uranium, right? So
Mm-hmm.
overall, about 1,000, about 1,900,000 cubic meters. This is about 67 million cubic feet of waste containing radionuclides, and heavy metals was just left there. There was no attempt
Mm-hmm.
when they left to clean or secure it at all. Oh, and did I
Wow.
mention this area is prone to landslides and earthquakes? Now,
It's just a great place to have everybody's home in the bottom of the valley.
yeah. Now, once the Soviet Union left, the economy tanked, worse than it was before. Those living in Maillusu were left with nothing but like picking up scraps to sell. And of course, like a lot of this was contaminated. So they were around a lot of this radioactive and heavy metal contamination. Now, as if the presence of all this radioactive and toxic material wasn't enough, like just being there had been an incident in 1958, about 10 years before that operation shut down, that made matters worse. On April 16th, 1958, heavy rainfall and an earthquake, I guess at the same time, um, very bad luck, added to the poor workmanship of the site. And like all this just led to one of the tailings dams failing. So about half of the volume of that dam fell into the Maillusu River just below and like 90 feet away, not even that far away from this river. Okay. Uh,
Oh man.
and then it flowed a good 25 miles or 40 kilometers downstream into Uzbekistan and into Fergana Valley, which is like heavy populated, was and is heavy populated. Now, the river flows into the river system that irrigates these people's crops. Okay. There
Yeah.
were fatalities and some destruction from the landslide itself, as well as heavy contamination in the area. We don't have actual numbers of those who died right at that time because they just don't exist. They weren't collected or reported.
Mm-hmm.
Anna Trevkina um, was a girl. Was a girl that grew up in Maillusu. She was about 6 years old when this disaster occurred. In a 2021 interview, she recalled playing by the river when she and her friends saw this surge in the current and ran away. Now, she works for the medical college there now. She stated, at that time, they did not talk about these accidents. There were no reports anywhere that people died, but people died. They were buried. We remember these funerals. So,
Wow.
a pharmacist in the hospital has said, we're full of illness. Many people have cancer, leukemia. I think this is because of the uranium, but the government never tells us anything, she says.
Well,
So,
yeah.
yeah. People basically come to this particular pharmacist complaining of the same symptoms over and over, such as children who are nauseous and vomiting a lot. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Health issues in Maillusu say it's difficult to draw a direct link between these medical problems and the tailings sites, insisting that more monitoring is needed. Of course, there's also a local doctor that tried to blame the higher incidence in uterine cancer in women uh, on them not having enough sex.
Excuse me, sir. You can have several seats.
There's one health official for you. Um,
Whew.
now, I think it's pronounced Peter Sharov. I think it's just the way they say Peter. I could be wrong, but he's a regional
Piotr.
coordinator. It's PETR.
Mhm.
So I'm just
Oh,
making it Peter Sharov.
okay.
He's a regional coordinator for Pure Earth, and they're like this non-government entity that helps with environmental things. But he did explain that the highest levels of radiation found were at the tailings site themselves, but also where people grazed their livestock, planted crops, or even played soccer. Um, so,
Wow.
since the dissolution of the Soviet Union, it was the 90s, no single company or country can really take responsibility for putting the waste there in the first place, making cleanup that much more difficult.
Right.
Now,
Right.
the head of the National Academy of Sciences, his name is Isakbek Torgiev. I'm probably butchered that. I am so sorry. But he's the head of the National Academy of Sciences Laboratory of Geoecological Monitoring, which is a very specific and cool sounding job. But he has said
Mhm.
the frequency of disasters in Kyrgyzstan's mountains has steadily increased since 1990 as well, with more landslides joining the region's already like frequent earthquakes that happen. And with earthquakes, you're going to have more landslides as well, obviously. Now, just for some examples, in 1993, after a particularly heavy downpour, part of the tailings dam was washed into the river. In 2005, the local media reported that about 300,000 cubic meters of uranium waste fell into the Maillusu River following an earthquake. In 2008, an emergency operation moved waste to a different site when a landslide threatened to dump it into the water. In 2017, a landslide just upstream from Maillusu changed the course of the river and nearly flooded two tailing dams.
Mhm.
Also, glaciers cover 4.2% of the land in Kyrgyzstan. Um, yeah, glaciers.
Uh-oh.
Now, these can often be a steady source of water. However, one impact of climate change is the transformation of glaciers into these glacial lakes that, and the accumulation of such mass amounts of water um, can lead to threats of mudslides and landslides and floods, all of which threaten the water supply and the water quality of Kyrgyzstan. So
Yeah, I'm
you
going to pull
just
up this
wash all of this in.
yeah, I'm going to pull. Do you have a great graphic that you sent to me? Let me pull this up on the screen here. It shows multiple sites along the Sir Darya River.
And that's actually really
Yeah.
good because I'm about to go over some of that anyway. Now,
Perfect.
at Samsar, which is another site in Kyrgyzstan's southern Jalalabad, I hope I'm saying that right, I'm sorry, province, um, lead tailings were dumped right next to a river that typically swells with meltwater every spring. So
Whoops.
it's not just the Maillusu area; it's surrounding areas as
Yeah.
well. So they
Yeah.
see this kind of pollution and contamination. In fact, there are 92 mining sites with radioactive waste and heavy metals uh, in Kyrgyzstan, many of them located on already unstable hillsides along the banks of rivers that flow into neighboring countries, like we
Oh
mentioned in
God.
Uzbekistan earlier. This ultimately
You said
endangers,
92?
yeah, and these are just a few that you can see on the screen right here in these
Good Lord.
particular areas, um, and kind of where they flow if the conditions, I would say, are right,
Mhm.
but they're not great conditions.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Mhm.
but this does yeah, this endangers an entire region of more than 14 million people because of all these mining sites. Now, some of the uranium mining sites were being worked until even 1995. I know I said the Maillusu area was ended way before that, but some of these mining sites were not. Now, in 1991, as I mentioned, the Soviet Union collapsed, and any monitoring or even acknowledgement, much less responsibility, went out the window. A 2006 analysis by Pure Earth, that's that environmental non-government organization, they named
Yeah.
Maillusu the third most populated place in the world at that time. The town's cancer rate was 50% higher than the national average. Uh,
Oh,
the organization reported and local doctors described a large number of birth defects, poor immune systems, and nausea and vomiting among children. Many communities living around other tailing sites that contain pesticides and heavy metals have yet to be studied. So that's a problem too.
man.
So locals say there has been little monitoring, as I mentioned, or maintenance of these dumps, whether it's the tailings dams or the uranium dumps themselves. The International Atomic Energy Agency wrote a 2010 report warning that Maillusu, which is currently home to around 25,000 people, was in urgent need of a cleanup. And this is that site that I mentioned. I mentioned ghost towns, but this site is actually still inhabited. They don't really have anywhere to go. I mean,
Oh my God.
so cleanup efforts have picked up in recent years. International donors like the European Union and Russia are spending millions of dollars in an effort to shore up these sites. And the Kyrgyz government
Hmm.
has successfully managed to move several of those sites away from the rivers. But environmentalists and residents argue that efforts are moving way too slow, raising basically the prospect of another toxic landslide even during the cleanup. A Only a bit of progress in terms of the people avoiding contamination has been done. Like before all of, beforehand it was like these kids were fishing in the river and just playing near these contaminated sites. There wasn't much education to stay away from them so much.
Yeah.
But Pure Earth installed water filters in local schools in 2012. Signs have been added around the area warning of the danger posed by radiation um, around these tailing sites. Now, I will also say, though, that there have also been fences that have been erected around sites, but those have been like stolen to be used as scrap metal. So, like, even
Oh,
even while
I
even
just
while
ran across a
trying,
photo of that.
yeah, even while trying to
Yeah.
like fence off areas or prevent people from getting into these areas, some things have sort of prevented them from trying to do that. um,
Hang on. I got to show you. This is a really funny photo. It's from just what you're talking about here. It's a sign that says danger radioactive, contamination. It's been like bent and
mhm.
rotated around. It's because somebody's trying to steal it.
Yeah, because like there's people here who are so poor they try to get scrap metals and
Yes. I mean,
things like that.
what other
Yeah.
choice do you have?
Now the people, according to the mayor of the town, Nurlanbek Umarov, people generally know to stay away from them. Um, but a reporter who visited in July, excuse me, of 2012, observed goats grazing at several sites. A local doctor and head of the Institute of Medical Problems of the Southern Branch of the National Academy of Sciences in the city of Osh, take a breath after reading that, said that health problems seemed to decrease after residents were warned to take precautions to avoid radiation exposure. So, duh, but like, we need more, there needs to be more education, but also cleanup of the area. So at least there's that, but the whole area, like I said, is still contaminated with radioactive material and heavy metals in the ground, water, livestock who graze there, the fish they catch, and the crops that they grow. And I haven't even mentioned anything about problems with bacterial infections from the water because that's there too. Basically, if you want clean water but don't have the proper filters, the water has to be collected, then filtered through cheesecloth, then left overnight to let the dust settle to the bottom. Finally, that water should be boiled.
brother.
So it is a process.
And I still wouldn't trust it.
Yeah, if you want
Man.
clean water, it's a process. But
Yeah, that's a
um,
desperate situation. My
otherwise, though,
God.
this water um, can have deadly effects. So the World Bank, the International Atomic Energy Agency, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and other international organizations are helping and funding cleanup of these sites. Between 2010 and 2012, a World Bank-led venture moved one of the most precarious of Maillusu's 23 tailing dams, or dumps, excuse me, to safer ground and reburied it at a cost of about 8.4 million US dollars. Um,
Hmm.
in August 2017, the Kyrgyz government ratified a framework agreement with the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which had been signed in January of that year. This ratification basically meant all of the basic conditions were in place for remediation work to begin at several of these uranium sites in the country. So a grant
Yeah.
of 23 million euros, this would be about 25 million US dollars, which is the largest since the establishment of the environmental remediation account, was made uh, to help stabilize and cover the radioactive tailings uh, dams located along the Maillusu River. The planned
Yeah.
soil covers will be about 2 meters thick. About 350,000 cubic meters of tailings need to be relocated to a safe disposal site. This project will also finance the rehabilitation of contaminated land and water resources in the area. So, yeah, I went if you couldn't tell, I went looking for what's being done about this.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and this is what I found. It's a lot of work, a lot of money, and there's still a lot to do. Um,
Hmm.
So it's a site that is not exactly very wealthy, so they need help from outside
No. Yeah.
sources.
That's the sad thing about, a country like this is it was part of the USSR or the Soviet Union, you say? So, I mean, the Soviet Union falls and then you know, it makes me wonder what Kyrgyzstan's economy is made up of. Since they're not mining uranium anymore, they don't. You
Actually,
know, uh,
I have an answer to that,
oh,
if you will.
perfect. You're not the only king of segues.
But I'll let you finish your your thought. Sorry.
Oh, I was just, you know, what economic leverage do they have to even provoke someone to invest in the cleanup? You know what I mean? Because if it's not a country that's economically um, viable or economically powerful, how do you get any other countries to come to the table except for uh, philanthropy? And that's tough because this
Yeah,
is not cheap.
and that's definitely going to have to be a part of it anyway because it's not much, but they have a light bulb factory that came there around the 60s, and it actually
Hmm.
these days provides employment to many of the almost 25,000 residents. I mean, it's only one thing, but it's a bit of help. Uh,
That's in
and
Maillusu,
yeah, now the town's name, now they obviously have a college of medicine. That's where that lady works too. I don't know how,
right?
you know, how developed it is,
Yeah,
but they're trying. They've got some smart people. They
yeah.
they do have some help, but it's just with the amount of pollution and the amount of just leftover uranium sites and just
Hmm.
the water situation. It's bad.
Yeah.
Now the town's name Malusu, well the Kyrgyzstan name for this city means oily water, and a nod to like
Oh,
because petroleum used to be extracted from the banks of this river as well. Like there was oil, and
okay.
that was a big thing too, even before the
Yeah.
uranium situation. Uh, yeah, that was around 1901 they were doing that. But it was later changed
Hmm.
optimistically um, and nicknamed City of Light because of the light bulb factory that does provide employment for people. So
I mean, I appreciate the thought.
They're trying to they're trying to be a place of positivity, but they definitely need help because it's not their fault that this happened because, these people came and they just sort of, mined up
Yeah,
this uranium and left it there.
of
So,
course.
yeah, and it's there it sits, and it's very problematic because it gets washed into the river. The river feeds into the crops. You've got people bathing, drinking this water. It's in the soil. Kids are playing around it, or
Mhm.
were until they were finally informed, "Hey, stay away from this." Um,
Yeah.
so it's a lot, and it
It
doesn't get talked about.
destroys Yeah, it destroys a community's ability to sustain life.
Yeah.
Like there's almost basically the I don't know. I know they're making efforts, but almost the best effort, I mean the best choice may be to simply leave, to simply, like again, but I'm thinking in American terms, like, oh, it's a
Mhm.
super fun site. You got to evacuate the place and
Well, this is a whole
compensate
country,
everyone who needs
basically.
relocation. That's not how the Kyrgyz government doesn't,
Well,
they're not
obviously,
dealing with the
I
same
mean,
amount of
but
resources.
the whole country has these like mining sites dotted across it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah.
Um, and we think of America. America's huge. Like you can. It's
Yeah.
hard to just pick up and leave here too, but it's not. These
It's not
people
impossible.
also, these are these people's homes. They have ties to this place.
Yes.
It is.
Mhm.
There's probably more cultural stuff added to that, and like they also
Mhm.
can't just get up and leave. They're dependent on this water system. There's a lot involved, and where are they going to go? Another place
Yeah.
where there's just another mining site, like um, that's
You'd almost
that's
have to leave the country.
that's
You'd have
hard.
to immigrate. Yeah.
And even like Uzbekistan, like the water that has flown to it has caused pollution to that
Mhm.
country. So
Yeah.
it's like a domino effect that has just been a problem.
Mhm.
And with climate change and stuff going on, like if that ice melts or those glaciers, melt and landslides are happening more often, more storms and stuff
Yeah.
like that, it's going to become more of
Mhm.
a problem.
It's
So
compounded.
that's why they're trying to like quickly work on it and to hopefully get some of those things cleaned up before any of that does happen.
Right. So all that to say, we need the aliens.
Now we don't know. I mean, like the aliens could be coming from their own messed up place. Like we ruined our planet. Can we come join you? Excuse me. Have you
Yeah, we
seen
had
us?
really bad global warming. What's it like over here?
My God, we've talked a lot about aliens this episode. No real reason.
As
Uh,
one does.
yeah, as one does. But I do want to say, I only talked about like 3 areas in this particular episode. There are like others I was looking into, and I'll probably use that as my bonus topic for next week because there are other towns
Oh yeah.
and spots. But
Great stuff.
um, I think next week I'm actually thinking of, um, I'm gonna leave it a surprise, but there's gonna be a part of it that involves prions, a part of it. So
Mhm. Sounds good.
little hint, little, little
Mhm.
nudge.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for listening and watching this episode. That's going to do it for this one, and we will see you in the next one. Bye bye.